first off, thank you so much to you both for taking time to sit and talk to me about Werewolf Heart of the Forest today. And if you want to just quickly introduce yourselves.
Okay, so hi, my name is Arthur, and I'm a designer at Different Tales and one of the writers of Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest game, which we'll be discussing today.
Arthur also was on the Witcher team, the Witcher 1 team, as a lead story writer. And he's also writes a bunch of tabletop RPGs back in the days, and he was also a very popular author, were published in magazine about tabletop RPGs, and he's humble, so I'm here to tell more about him.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, so he and I are in RPGs from I think early 90s, and we started playing World of Darkness from 94 maybe, when we bought our first Vampire books, and then we got to know each other through the RPGs. I was the editor in the magazine, and he was one of the authors that was published in there. My name is Piotr Gnyb. I'm from Walkabout Games. We are the publisher of Werewolf, and I'm in charge of PR and marketing of the game.
Perfect. And you touched on this briefly, but kind of what's your guys' history with specifically Werewolf the Apocalypse, kind of the branch off of World of Darkness?
Okay. I started playing Werewolf in the 90s, when it came out in Poland. So I have a funny story about it, because a dog bit me and tore my trousers, and I got some money from the owner of the dog to buy a new pair of trousers, and I just went home, asked my mom to stitch the pair, and use the money to buy Werewolf the Apocalypse. So
oh wow.
So basically it started with a dog
It's
fight.
a kind of Spider-Man story, right?
I know.
Well, as a classical werewolf story, it was like this German Shepherd. So the dog looked a bit like a wolf. So
Yeah.
yeah. But jokes aside, I started playing Werewolf in the 90s, and well, I became a World of Darkness fan. Sometimes a gamer, mostly a game master, sometimes a reader. Well, as the time went on, I was mostly collecting and reading the books, because I don't have so much time to play play games. So I went through all the editions that were from the new World of Darkness, now called the Chronicles of Darkness, and now with the fifth edition of the Vampire the Masquerade and the great comeback of World of Darkness, it so happened that I have the privilege of writing a game.
The first ever.
There you go.
Game.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, I must say.
So as we said, we both were really deep into the World of Darkness scene. I established a first World of Darkness fan association in Poland. I was also an editor in the biggest magazine of tabletop RPG games, and I was curating the World of Darkness section. We write a bunch of articles, a bunch of scenarios. So I think when we kind of created World of Darkness scene in Poland, both Jacek also, who is also a co-founder of Different Tales, and other people who are involved in the Werewolf game. We all started mainly as a vampire guys, but while working on Werewolf, we feel like right now werewolves are more for us more exciting because they are more relevant, and we all see this a million movies when the vampires are whining that that mortality sucks and they're so lonely and stuff, and then you have this fallen tragic warriors who are trying to fight this battle for Earth, and they are losing in this Greek tragedy. So this vision that we are presenting in Werewolf, for me personally, and I'm really was a vampire guy, is more exciting than any vampire game in the area right now.
Yeah, after trying out your guys' demo, and I looked more into World of Darkness, the tabletop RPG, and Werewolf specifically, and I had no idea the depth and richness of the lore available to you guys with the different tribes and how each one is kind of its own take on a different version of a werewolf, of the Gauru, and it's incredibly interesting. And then when I went back and replayed again the demo, I had such a different perspective, and it's like, this is so cool. And what about specifically the werewolf side of World of Darkness appeal to you guys to that you wanted to make the game? Like, why did you decide on werewolf?
When we started discussing with Paradox which game to make, well, there were two things on the table. The first thing that we noticed is that there are a number of vampire games in the making right now, and there's this one big werewolf game coming, Earthblood, and we thought that probably making a werewolf game would be more interesting, because there is this fan base waiting for years, like to see werewolves on the screen. That's one thing. But the other thing is that let's say my personal perspective on werewolf changed a lot over the years. When I started, well, the eco warrior, eco terrorist part,
Captain Planet.
Oh,
yeah,
and the Planeteers. That was my jam when I was a kid.
Yeah. I was like, okay, so this is a horror game, but you play sort of an aggressive Captain Planet. I was not a fan of this at the time. I was more into like this, tearing heads off and throwing cars part like of the franchise.
And chasing vampires.
Yeah, but when you look at it right now, the game became really relevant. When you just look outside, or I don't even have to look outside because it's terribly hot in my apartment right now, and I think hotter than a year ago or 2 years ago. So the environmental crisis that is going on is very hard to miss. And the other thing that's interesting for me is that Werewolf is a game about rage, about anger, about feeling angry and what it makes to you. Like the notice that anger and rage allows you to do things. It just janks you out of stagnation, but also there is a huge risk of let's say side effects, like some casual or collateral distraction that may follow, and that's one part of it. But when you have no anger, there is only like hopelessness, and you can do nothing. Mm-hmm. So the whole Werewolf franchise is about balancing how angry you are at the things that are happening right now. Sometimes, because it's a game, it allows you to explore the anger, see the consequences, and they are not obvious. Like, there are good things that happen because you are angry. But sometimes also, bad things happen when you are angry. So, and this dynamics of anger, of rage is something that I think is very relevant to many people right now, no matter where we live or what we do. So that's the thing that I grow to appreciate, like, over the years.
And for me, from the 90s, we were all looking to ourselves like, I'm so suffering, I'm very important. So have this vampire and a beast, and he was wondering if he's a beast or human and stuff like that. And he ignored all the world around us, and the world came and beat him in the ass. And right now, you need to look outside of you, see what happened, because we are looking in ourselves, and tell the story of these warriors who are fighting for their cause, because now we really have a good cause to fight for. And werewolves, like I said, maybe are not the best people to do it because they're so enraged, but still they're the only ones that are doing it. So I think that's why we move into the werewolf, because the world is different right now, and you need to look outside of you and your suffering, loneliness, and everything that vampires are whining about, and start to act. And
what's also interesting when I look at how people react to our demo is the realization that the werewolf is also a very spiritual game. It's about monsters, but it's also about being connected to the world, not about a specific faith or something like this, but about this feeling of being connected to the world, like to ideas. It's a game about how ideas shape the world, because in Werewolf there's this whole spirit worlds where spirits of nature and ideas exist and they influence the world. So it's also, it can be also a very peaceful metaphor of, well, of how we exist. So yeah.
I also adore this cosmic triangle, Worm, Weaver, and Wild, and how they're connected, and that each element is needed and to be in balance. And what happens when you strengthen the one or the one of them are going insane. And when I was typing some tweets and stuff for our game, I was like, wow, I'm so in love in this story. I just remembered it, and it's so awesome. And I also was looking at one of the podcasts that was covering our game, and I said, like dude, look, Worm was right. The Weaver is the one that messed things up, and we need a reboot. So the Worm is a cool guy. We need to tell people that.
That's very cool. So now that we have a bit an idea of where you guys are coming from with Werewolf as a genre, or not genre, but as a IP and a franchise, give for people that might not know about Heart of the Forest, kind of give a taste of what is Werewolf the Apocalypse: Heart of the Storm. Like what's the story?
Okay. The story is it's a text-based game and
visual
like a modern take on visual novel, I would say. And it tells a story of Maya, who is American of Polish descent, and she comes back to Poland, to the land of her ancestors, because she suspects that there is some, well, dark secret in her family past.
She dreams about the forest, so
yeah, and the game takes place in Białowieża. It's a very old primordial forest on Polish-Belarusian border, and it's one of the oldest forests in Europe. What's different about it is that this forest is not cultivated, and there are like this really primal nature. And there's a national park, but right outside the national park, and it's based on a real story. There's an illegal logging going on, so it's a priceless forest, a priceless ecosystem that's being logged and cut down, like just basically for money, and well, it's basically illegal. So you got stuck in this situation, and this is like a perfect setting for a werewolf game, because we have the primal nature on one side and grit and technology and huge machines on the other side, and between them there are werewolves that try to like save the day, and usually they heroically fail. How it will be in our game, it depends on your choices.
Yeah, it's also like an awesome introduction to the game, because Maya doesn't know what she is. She just dreams of the forest, and also she is not from Poland. So when she comes here, you get to learn the culture, the history, and the setting with her. So you don't like need to know anything, because she doesn't. And also, as I said before, it's based on the visual novel genre, but because we track a lot of choices, and for me, like the definition of RPG is choices and consequences. So we track all your choices, and because it's a text-based game, we are able to change the way you see the world based on your choices. So in a sense, who you are, you shape who you are, and who you are shows you the world differently. So your actions are different. So your Maya is made by you, and you can have an adventure of a spiritual woman which dreams about the forest. She comes here, connects with the nature, or frightened girl who sees strange things in her dreams, and he's frightened and paranoid, and everything is against her because she comes to fight these monsters.
Yeah. What we try to do, or what we aimed for, is to make a game that's an introduction to the setting, to the World of Darkness. So, as you said, it can be interesting, and it is interesting on its own right. And at the same time, if you know the setting, if you know all the nuances, you can see the second layer hidden
of the flavors.
Yeah, and why we did choose this setting, like this particular place for two reasons. One, that we wanted to add like the world to the World of Darkness, because most of the official materials,
Chicago, New York,
and LA, happening in in the US, and the US is a very interesting setting of its own, but it's just one part of the world. And the werewolf, like 30 years ago, it was built of very strong stereotypes. So if you had a, like, say, an adventure about saving a forest, it was usually the Amazonian rainforest. So there were just a few hotspots, like on the map, where things were happening. And we have the same stories happening right now in Europe, and they are interesting. Like we have, let's say, parts of untouched nature all over the world. So we chose like the spot that is close to us, and that we know that we can tell the story of in a respectful way, like connecting to our experiences and like writing about stuff we personally know. Yeah, we are writing about places we've been to, like about a political situation that we understand.
Yeah, we know the background, how to write it, and it's hard for Eastern and Central Europe people to write about US and South America, stuff like that, because you might like either miss something or that's something unintentionally which will be unrespectful or harmful to others. So if you set the story in the culture that you know, like really know, then you know that you're safe.
Well, we try to do games that are games, and they are entertainment, but they are based on things that are true. I think the element of truth is important
and makes it even more interesting.
Yeah. So that's what we are aiming up for.
So going off that point, how much, because the location you guys picked for the game, real world place that you visited that you know of, how much of kind of the lore and legends come from local legends, like actually are told over there, and how much is existing lore in the world of Werewolf the Apocalypse?
What we were trying to do, we were trying to take real places and real events and present them in the light of the World of Darkness lore. So
add another layer.
So for example, we have this barrows in the demo, and there are actual barrows, very ancient graves in the forest. And
we even showed the link to the article and the scientific article about the discovery of its barrows.
So there were there were people who were living there like, I don't know, 2,000-3,000 years ago, and they disappeared, and now trees are like growing all over their graves, and the place is real. We had a story about the wolf cubs that were stolen by some people and then raised up by scientists, and this is a real story. And the wolves are real. You can find their pictures on the internet, and we have like a place of power that's a tourist trap in the real world. And in the 90s there were like lots of like this dowsers, like people who were like trying to find like water and were interested in radiesthesia, and they believed the place is a real place of power. But in the World of Darkness, it is a real place of power. So we were taking places that really exist and just like added the supernatural element that
what's
is
fascinating
really in the game.
When you got like a place that's like 2,000 years of history, you always find some myths, some legends, or some lore in there that you can say, okay, so you know this, so this was done by werewolves, right? Or even now you can see this article that on one of the other forests suddenly appeared like a huge castle, like from out of nowhere. So say, okay, so it's like Tzimisce vampires invading the werewolf lands, right? You don't need to add nothing. It's a World of Darkness story unfolding on you in your newspaper.
That's very cool. That sounds really cool. Now, in the demo, and one of the main aspects of your guys' game is that your choices will affect the not stats, but kind of personality makeup of Maya. Where you have brave, inspiring, analytical, spiritual, and cunning, and then your willpower and your rage. Is there, outside of, like, what all... how can I phrase this? Do those options just allow different dialogue choices to happen, or
So it
is
works like this.
Yeah.
It works like this. The core of the system is rage. The more rage you have, the more aggressive options you have. You can do some things that you cannot do if you have lower rage, but you are like more brash, not very sociable. If you have lower rage, you are you connect with people. You have more empathy. So this is like the main thing that changes, and every scene has parts of text that are different depending on the level of your rage. So the scene change a bit or a lot if you enter the same scene with high rage or lower rage. So that's one change. Second change is that rage closes and opens options. And sometimes they just change how the scene plays out, but sometimes they open and close like a small storylines or some information or actions and stuff like this. And so, and you can use willpower to do things that are hard, and sometimes you have to use willpower to contain your rage. So this is this balance,
like a break
between rage and willpower. And the other thing that happens is that your choices shape your personality, and there are places quite important for the story when your personality shapes the story, but the personality is also connected with the rage. When you are raging, it's easier for you to be, like, say, brave or inspiring, but if you have low rage, you can be cunning or spiritual, and those so how you manage rage, it also like moves the window in which you can shape your personality. I don't know if I...
Yeah.
When you play, it's maybe more obvious, or when you look back at your play. So it's all connected, but the rage is the heart of the system.
And we also indicate on the left side of the text what was changed and why. So this part of the text was written because of this stat.
So, just as an example, if my Maya is has maxed out an analytical stat that's maxed out, but not so much spirituality, how does that impact my gameplay, or my game?
At the very beginning, it's it's maybe a bit spoilery, but if you play the demo, you will see. So in Werewolf, when you are born a werewolf, depending when you were born and which moon you were born, you have a role in werewolf society. You can be a judge or a warrior or a shaman. So depending on your personality, it shapes the auspice, like this your role in werewolf society. And as the game progresses, there are significant parts of the story that are different depending on which role you are playing in the game. So it starts with small things, with how you interact, and later in the full game it shapes big parts of the story. So
because I don't know if it's a spoiler, but Maya is a werewolf, so
yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So the personality assessment aspect affects more of that kind of role that werewolf.
You can either see it, and by the end of the demo, when we tell you how you played and what auspice your Maya would get in a full game.
Okay. One of the things that I really liked playing the demo is how your reactions to different situations will affect how much a character or a forest likes you, or how they view you. In outside of the forest tripping you when it doesn't like you, what other sorts of, or how dire of reactions will these get? Could it potentially lead to an early end game, an early ending to this story? if the
Uh,
the forest just
well-
hates your guts, will it just like get rid of you?
Well,
And then,
we are more the like fans of letting you make mistakes or make a mess of
Mhm.
mistakes and then live with the consequences of your
And they can be
decisions.
severe, so
So you will see the whole story, and the story can end good, but it can end tragically, depending on how you play it, because it's a werewolf. So tragedy is always an option, and but your relations to other characters and even fate of some characters is can be very different depending on how you connected to them.
people can die.
Well,
people
they
can
always
die,
do.
but not necessarily Maya. Like,
not
Before
not
the
in the
end.
middle of the story.
Yeah, okay.
Not in the. So,
Okay.
it's not
what we are
it's not like this old sort of choose your own adventure games when you have many dead ends and you had to find the right way to beat the story. Here we have quite a big number of paths you can take, and they will always take you through the whole story, but the story can be very different. So it's more like this.
So for me, when I was a game master or storyteller, I usually want to tell an awesome story, which can be bad for the player, but I wanted, well, it's not say to kill him at the first attempt or bad dice roll, right? You are playing to relieve an awesome tale. So with different tales, we trying to say that we try to tell many different stories, because maybe at the end you won't like who you become during this journey with Maya, and with us it's also about both destination and journey. So it's not like you turn left so you died, right? But you turn left so things happened. Maybe you're pissed at yourself and your character isn't what you suppose that she will be, but it's like, oh wow, like I fucked up badly, but it's still an awesome adventure.
How many different endings are you guys aiming for? Or different variations of it?
You know, it's hard to say, because we are the game's also about, let's say, different middles.
Okay.
So
The
but
journey, how you get
can-
there is
Yeah,
different.
the journey and the
but-
destination.
So, but you can. Well, I think you can say there are like about 4 significant end states with quite a number of variations and paths leading to them. So, I think even if you are like if you like replaying games, I think you can play 2 or 3 times without much fatigue, I think. So there is a number of sub stories or variations, or at least that's what I think, looking at the structure and at how people play, like during our focus test. So
I must say, as a PR guy, but he never told this to another journalist. So
yeah, so maybe but
yeah, well,
let's say I think that's accurate. I would
Very
say
cool.
that's accurate.
How
yeah,
many...
but you could see, like, even with the demo, how different
Oh,
your
yeah.
path and the character can be. So if you multiply it by the rest of the game, you can see that.
So
it's not-
that's why I'm saying maybe that maybe for me, even although the different endings are very satisfying, what's more important for me are the different middles, that
Yeah.
we have different ways to reach the ending, and that's also, I think, quite cool for me as a player. So.
Oh yeah, all about that journey. Especially with RPGs, as a
Yeah.
big tabletop RPG player, that's one of the best things about that's like this style
Yeah.
of game. It's like, even as a DM, you can have, okay, this is where I want my players to start out. This is
Yeah.
the route I'm going to have them go on, and it quickly veers off course, and it
Yeah.
never goes according to plan.
Yeah.
And you never know quite what's going to happen, and that's one of the magical things
Yeah.
about tabletop RPGs.
And for me, I think we've grown enough as a medium the games that you can lose in the game, but also have an awesome thing that you won, right? It doesn't have to be that your character is always beating everybody and wins or dies trying, but even like a tragic ending is awesome because the journey was so satisfying that you know that the failure was like this perfect ending of this black, dark comedy or dark movie, right?
Yeah. Now I have to ask because this is actually what kind of led to us talking today was in my article I touched on that I kind of wish there was a dice rolling kind of mechanic sort of thing for checks for proficiencies or like skills if I can succeed or fail at something. And Peter, you reached out and we had a good conversation and it led to this, and it's like, what was the decision behind not, because it is a tabletop role-playing game that traditionally you can roll dice and there are skill checks, things like that. What was the decision to remove it kind of altogether?
That's a very good question, and because we had exactly the same conversation with Jacek, with whom I was like designing the game, and we toyed a bit with the idea of checks, but in a production like this, if like every choice had a dice check, it would generate positive outcome, negative outcome, positive but, negative and, like critical failure, and it's like 5 versions of reality you have to take into account. And when you are playing like at your table with your friends, it doesn't cost you anything. You just
because of an AI generates adventure.
You're just telling the one story that really happens. But when you are making a game, it costs you a lot because you have to write every story, every version of the story. And frankly speaking, not for all the choices, it was easy to find very exciting consequences of failure or a success. So after discussing and trying some things and looking at how long we wanted the game to be, what scenes we wanted to have in the game, we decided that we would rather surprise players with some consequences of like choices without randomness. So you see some choices and they all seem okay. Maybe one of them has some extra, let's say, sting to it, but you don't know it before choosing the game, like the options. So the dynamics of uncertainty is there more or less, and you don't see the whole content because your rage like hides or opens some options. And after playing a bit, we decided that this is quite a good like estimation or simulation of the feelings we have when playing at the table with our friends. So we were sort of adapting the feelings we have when we are playing a werewolf like as a tabletop game to the realities of this production, to the budget we have. So you always make some choices of this type, and well, for me it works good enough.
And for me, not as a player, but as a player of this game, I think some roles are made into your mind. So when you choose an option and you're like rolling on your intelligence, if the option I chose will give an effect that I want, right? So you are rolling in your head against your own stats.
Very cool.
Right? Because and you see the effect, and for me, like this effect that this person likes you or dislikes you, or your stats grow or weaken. That's the thing that tells you, okay, so you failed at your roll, at your intelligence, or perception, or not.
You know, I don't know if you, Scott, if you played Disco Elysium.
Yes, I played some Disco Elysium.
Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
so this is, apart from the stunning visuals, this is basically a text game with dice rolls, and I love the concept, but it was like a work of, I think, maybe a dozen of people, maybe more, and it took
Many
them
years.
like 4 years.
Yeah.
So it's a different scale of production, and it's kind of sexy, I think, to make a game like this. But we decided to make something that started as a visual novel, and like when you look at like the classical visual novel, we are very system heavy in comparison. So so we're trying to stick, not to go too far from the genre we started, like, because we wanted it to be like recognizable, like so people who like visual novels won't get lost like in the game. And we added as much of werewolf
improved
mechanisms as we could, and and you can see how it turned out. I think it's quite okay.
And also, if you're asking how long is the production, we started early this year, and I think from March we went into full production. So
oh wow, so it hasn't been in production too long then.
Yeah.
No.
It's well, what you guys have shown so far, and the demo I played, it very impressive, very impressive. One thing I have to say, I absolutely love the art you guys have in the game. It
I will tell that to the team.
It does such a good job conveying kind of that unease and unsettling nature of, especially in the dream sequence in the prologue when you're in the forest. It's like the blood red against the dark trees, and then it's very unsettling, but it does such a good job. But then when you get to the different locations and you start seeing things, oh, this is a forest, but if you kind of look a little closer, you see a wolf's head, like with the cub's dead. Absolutely love it. But I'm curious, with this being so much of a you choose your route, and it affects kind of how people view you and how you view these surroundings in the game itself. For Maya, do those images kind of change at all, or maybe one image becomes more apparent, like the skulls in the burial site? If you're very kind of rage or whatnot, those might appear more clearly against otherwise.
We were experimenting with it, and some parts of the picture do change, but I think that the most change you can see is that when you are somewhere with different people, or some events happen very differently, different parts like of the pictures are shown. So so I think they are not in tune with, like say, with your rage or spirituality. We probably had too little time for that.
Maybe in second part of Heart of a Forest.
There you go. There you go.
So because we are, to be honest, we're experimenting with the art style like to the very last moment, to find something that is evocative, but it's not like too literal. Like it's not word-to-word illustration. That leaves you some space for your own interpretation.
But that was the case with RPG systems, right? When you have this situation.
And finding the style took us some time. So then we were just, when we found it, we just started, making the content, because there are a lot of illustrations in the game. I think. Lot of.
So I can tell you, my dream as a publisher, I would love for Different Threads to establish like a genre for World of Darkness visual novel/RPG games and improve on them. So this one is like a test, because I think we improved a lot on everything that's on the market, and I think we found the sweet spot that you could do in the established type of the game, but show the new way of telling the stories, and when they really change based on you and you have this feeling of tabletop RPG. And if this one will be also a commercial success, I can assure I'll fight everything that I have to do more of this type of games, and even better, like you said, when the illustrations are changing because of how you feel or who you are.
But yeah, I love the illustrations. Like, if you guys release an art book of all the illustrations,
we do have wallpapers with them, and we can send them to you. Right now, we revealed 2 of them. There are 7, but you can get an early package if you like.
That would be fantastic, because like that.
Awesome.
I love how kind of the undertones and in regards to working on that art style, it's like it doesn't shove it in your face like what you're trying to get across. It's like the more you kind of look at it. Like, I found myself when I was playing the game, I would just, like, pause and kind of debate what response I wanted to give, and then my eyes would look at the picture and it's like, oh, there's skulls there in that tree. Oh, there's a wolf head there. And I just found myself kind of lost in the art itself, and it was fantastic.
I very rarely have a character, but one time I played, and my friend was running a game. I was a guy that tried to be like very responsible and spiritual, and just lost his shit every time anything happened, and had like so many problems with containing the rage. So it was a great character, but not a very good pack member. I would say I had fun playing the character, but usually I run the game.
Yeah, so I also usually run the game, but if I play, I usually play as in Vampire, the power clans like Lasombra, Toreador, or Ventru. And I really like Glasswalkers because it's like the secret tribe of werewolves living in the city and trying to make up the Weaver. So yeah, and I really like to play weak characters, because if you are weak, then there's more weird stuff happening and things that could forever be like something that is not fun, can be challenging, and
I like myself, and I like when my players do that, like to do things that are not optimal. Like, I love deliberately making mistakes while playing to see what happens. And
because in real life it's hard, and in game, like, you can do it and check out how bad you can screw up and still survive, of course.
Yeah, of course, that's the end goal, to still survive.
In our group, sometimes happens this situation that someone is like, I should do this, but I think if I do that, the story would be so much more interesting. And we are all like, okay, so so let's do something stupid, and we then just that was stupid.
And as I said before, like, what was cool starting, I think, from Heavy Rain, when you could do in Heavy Rain everything right and fail at the end, and with this awesome movie when this detective is doing everything right and then everything falls apart. Then in our game also you could do like Civet tragedy and this Greek tragedy where there's no good exit and everything falls apart before your eyes, and you try to be good and it doesn't happen.
So I think we are fans of interesting stories.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
Which is tough for our characters, of course.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, thank you both so much for taking time out of your busy Fridays to sit and talk some Werewolf the Apocalypse Heart of the Forest with me. This was a great time, like hearing your guys' perspective on how you've approached telling the story and how the systems work. It's just grown my interest and excitement to see where these interesting tales will take me.
Thank you.
Q4 2020.
Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, until then, thank you again, and
thank you.
Have a good day to you.
You too. Have a good weekend.